Welcome to this first seminar, AMOK seminar, for about different aesthetic and creative topics, which I hope will be a recurring series at AMOK at some point. Today we're going to talk about composition in different areas of art forms anyway. We have invited Andrea, who you probably all know here, but talking about sound art. Yeah. And then we have Jonas, who you probably also know, who talks about music.
Yeah.
And then we have Mariana, who you probably also know. We'll talk about photography. And I'm Kasper, and I don't know if you know me,
And
but
we also have you.
and we also have me. And I will
Soon we will find out what you will talk about.
Yeah, and very, very soon we'll find out what I'll be talking about. And I think I should say that this is like a very open format, we hope at least. So we of course encourage you to ask questions. At least in the end, we have some spare time around each talk where you can ask questions to the individual talker if that's somehow relevant. And otherwise, we'll also have like a roundtable discussion in the end, where I guess we all can participate and talk about composition, not necessarily related to these talks, but more also in a general sort of way. And happy to see so many of you, and I hope we'll have fun. And also I wanted to say something about the bar, but I guess you all know the rules, so maybe not that relevant. Anyway, I'm the first talker, and I will be talking about poetry, some of my own struggle in this genre. Let's keep it at that. It's also we have a timetable that's running. So, but anyway, I have brought along 3 headings just to make it very confusing. I have one that is simply called the ontology of the artwork, which is very theoretical. It's theoretical anyway. About some more general aesthetic topics or wanderings, I should probably say. And then I have one that's called component, which you'll already see is kind of the poetic inflation I'm trying to develop in my in my general talk, which is more about my own work, stuff that I have done, and then I have a last bit that's called architecture, which is the thing that I know actually nothing about, but in some way will try to talk about anyway, which is like stuff I would like to do if I get the idea at some point. Anyway, let's get going. First of all, the ontology of the artwork. I have brought along just one slide, which is what is ontology, just to make it clear what that actually means. And I would say it's a question of what the thing really is. It's like, of course, it's a philosophical topic that you have. So if you know, like Plato, it has something to do with the world of ideas. But in some way, it asks what is the actual essence of a phenomena or a topic or whatever it is. And the thing that the reason why I bring this up is because I would like to talk about the ontology of the artwork. So if we say that we are not talking about right now the creative process as such, but we are talking about the analysis of an artwork, what assumptions do we have of an artwork? What do we assume that it is behind everything, or in the sphere of ideas? And how would we detect, or how would we identify what we're looking for within an artwork? And I would say that there are basically 2 ways to look at an artwork. One is as a unity, and one is as something that is a conflict. The unity bit is, for example, like you have this thing from, I think it's from rhetorics originally, that's called decorum or decorum in Latin, which basically means appropriateness of style. This is usually how you will see your teachers talk about an artwork. This has something to do with there needs to be a correspondence between form and content. So if you have a comedy play, for example, then you have comedy content, and then the form in some way should match the comic element. So you have some kind of idea that there should be a unity between these things, and this has a lot to do with what kind of questions do you ask when you analyze a certain artwork. And of course, it has something to do with what's the end goal of your analysis. If you can, in this paradigm or whatever you call it, if you can somehow show that there's a correspondence between form and content, then your analysis is like ended and everything is good in this sort of paradigm. So it's very much about talking about these content and form, and of course also style. In a way, it's also a very common thing. So you have these sort of also form concepts that are like maybe inherited. You could say you write a sonnet or you write a tragedy or that sort of thing, and then you have some rules that apply to this genre, and then you fill it with whatever content you come up with. But it's like this division of form and content that is perhaps one of the most important concepts of that. That's not what I'm going to talk about, of course. But it's just to illustrate that this is like the way we usually talk about aesthetics. Not usually, but this is probably the most common way to talk about aesthetics or to talk about an artwork, is to somehow look for a unity within it, or look for the totality and how it binds together. And the other thing I want to demonstrate today is an artwork that has conflict as its essence, in a way. So rather than talking about unity, some people call it technique as content. I think we'll return to that later. But the thing that I want you to remember just right now is that what we're looking for is some kind of dominant principle. That you can somehow see that it's like all techniques are somehow in conflict with each other, and then in this conflict some principle will be dominant, and you can see it because the other principles will be deformed in a way. It's a very abstract way of putting it right now, but I think we'll get back to it quite a lot. If we just digress momentarily from that assumption, then I have an example of something where I would say you can find a conflict between components, and I say if you put any word within at the center of a circle, then you can say that all words actually are composed of something that's semantic, something that's visual, and something that's auditive. This would be to me true to any word. So if you have like chosen a very, very poetic word, of course, for this occasion. So if you have like a rose, then the semantic content of a rose, the word rose, would be the actual rose, like out in the real world. It's basically what the word means. And then of course you have a visual component, which is what it looks like on paper. Like the,
I mean, what the letters look like.
Yeah, what the letters look like the very graphic fact of...
Not what rose looks like, but what the word looks
Yes.
like on paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't know how I would write this. You probably put some quotation marks or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it relates solely to how are the letters composed in this word. And then of course you also have, now I can use this, the phonetic
How the word
writing.
sounds.
Yeah, so this is just phonetics. It's rose because you pronounce it this way if you see these letters. So it's just to signify that it has something that's the real content, like out in the real world. It has something that's on the paper, and it has something that we say to each other. And my point is, this is true for all words. You can put all words into this this schema, and then you'll get something out. It's like a very it's like a very true way of approaching a thing. And I just call these the components of a word.
Unless there is a language that contains a word that's just the silence.
Yeah. You could
I've
say
never
then.
heard of anything like
Then you could probably say that the silence is the auditive component in some way, but I don't know. This I think is interesting because if you look at general poetry, you can actually see how this is in conflict also in most works. I brought along just very basic poem by William Blake. Oh, thou rose art sick, or thou rose thou art sick. The invisible worm, and so on and so on and so on, which is like, this is perhaps the very semantic way of looking at words.
Will you read it for us?
I don't. I read some of my own stuff,
Yeah.
but you can see it's like you're sort of within the same area of thought here. You have a rose, you have a worm eating the rose, something about crimson joy, like sparkling colors, and you have something about love down here. So it's like very, it's a very semantic way of looking at something here. And I say also semantic in the way that it has to do, of course, with the rose as something out in the real world, but it also has something to do with metaphors or symbols and all these sort of meanings that we attach to a rose. What is interesting about this poem is that you can see it also has a very strong auditive component. For example, that you have this worm storm sort of like rhyme. Maybe it's even more like a visual, visual working anyway. You have joy, destroy, so these sort of things are like in some way controlling where the poem is going, simply because it has something to do with the sounds of the words. So there's some kind of there's some principles here, in play that has to do with the audio and the semantics. If you go on, I also have just one from the Danish the Danish tradition. If you have like jeg går mig bygge vil, I afar me building will, to put it directly, you can see this has nothing to do with normal semantics. This is not grammatically anyhow, or in any way, how we would write this sentence. You wouldn't put the reflective pronoun here. I want to build a farm. I don't want to build me a farm. Makes no sense, or yeah, it does, but you wouldn't usually put it this way. And we'd also switch the words about. But as you can see, it fits a meter. You have jeg går mig bygge vil. So it like has this meter that it's trying to in some way apply to, and it also of course needs to rhyme to the next line. So it's like will and till sort of thing going on here. And of course you have all these concrete poetry stuff going on. This is also one of my favorite poems by E. Cummings, which is just the key to understanding this poem, is that he puts an L in the beginning, and then it says a parenthesis, and then it says a leaf falls, and then in parenthesis, and then it says loneliness. But you can see the way that he destroys these words gives a lot of connotations to other things. You have this one, for example. You have this L, which also looks like a one on the typewriter. You have the I-ness, like the I, and then the I-ness of that, which is somehow something you would not normally see this if you just read the word loneliness. Then you wouldn't think about the I-ness, for example. And it also has something to do with the leaf actually falling, that it sort of looks like something that's here, and then it turns around and then like falls in a way. So it has very many also graphical components that are somehow coming out in this way. And then I have some melody. I don't think we'll get into that right now. But then just to recap, so we have these three different components, and we can see that they switch around how they in some poems they dominate something, and you can see it by saying that the rose, for example, in William Blake, the semantic stuff is being dominated by the auditive stuff, and in E.A. Cummings you have the visual stuff dominating the semantic stuff, and so on and so on and so on. So rather than assuming that these things would somehow add up, or however you say it, you're actually looking for how these don't add up in a way.
But doesn't in the Cummings poem doesn't like the visual aspect somehow don't all these aspects somehow contribute to having a whole picture of the thing, or you say that they are in some kind of conflict? I hope it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that it depends on if you're in. Just turning back here. It depends on if you're looking at it this way or this way. This is just the way that you assume what you're looking for behind the poem. So if you do look at something like this, then I agree it's not because it's invalid to talk about form and content. It's not invalid to say that they supplement each other, or however you say it.
Yeah,
but it's just to say that there's something here that's actually deforming the semantic aspect of it. It's you can see that there's some meanings that are being pushed forward that are visual, and then there's some semantic stuff that is drawn backwards. Then you're not supposed to read this, so don't.
Okay. Eyesight test.
Yeah, exactly. Then I have just brought one of my own poems, just to even things up. It's something that's called Ud, jeg vil gerne invitere dig ud, which maybe you know from Poetry Slam, but anyway, good. But anyway, the idea here is to take something that's out, I want to invite you out, and then say out and in is actually some kind of, in some way it's a semantic component, of course, in the first place, because it has something to do with going out and to invite someone, but it also has this sound component of a conflict. And it's basically a story about someone wanting to ask someone out. And then as this goes along, the conflict of in and out is somehow drawn into the narrative. So for example, they talk about the menu, and then everything on the menu is like hollowed out chick in, inner thighs cooked out in gin. Again, it's like gin has nothing to do with in. But there's somehow a sound component that reaches into the narrative and then decides what's on the menu right here. In the same way, I don't have this one in English then, but in the same way, this is just about what they're talking about. He says something about the intelligent outplays about investment and international integration, blah, 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 which is also, again, something from the sound reality of this poem is somehow reaching in and then forming the narrative to be about something particular. And then in the end, it sort of mirrors this out, I want to invite you out. They go home or to her place in a way, and then it says, do you want to invite me in to dance, in to eat, in and out, which is, of course,
in and out.
Yeah. We're back in the semantics in some way here. And then in the very end, she outbursts vand-ish, forsvind, which is also an in, and then goes in. This should be in Danish, otherwise this makes no sense. But then it says in the end, jeg vil gerne sige, hvad der udvikler sig til, men er indviklet. So it's like, I want to say what it has evolved into, but it's complicated, which is just again this in, out sort of thing. So this is very dense, and we can see this is actually I would say an example of a poem that then demonstrates how the sound reality reaches into the narrative. You can say this is a very linear way of doing it, because it's like, yeah, you know, it's an episode sort of thing. So it's basically just a narrative that has this component that are reaching. And this leads to just some of the last part that I wanted to talk about, which is like perhaps more what can we do actually with this this way it works if we are not thinking about it in a linear fashion. So I could say you have this is based of course on a complex of this in-out these in-out words that goes back and forth. Sorry. And I just want to introduce you to one other complex that I have been working with anyway, which is about this, that we have we and C as two like main components or primary fundamental components, and then if you, for example, merge these two words, you'll have vise, which is to show, or to we see in some way would also be a...
But also a song, right? In vise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then if you put like, if you say you put another prefix on this, you'll have bevise, like to prove. So it's like you have something again, something that's about love, that you see someone, you fall in love with them. It's like love at first sight kind of thing going on here, and you have of course the we, which is the goal of any love interest, I think. And then you have this new reality, which is about showing stuff, that you see someone and then you want to show them the world as you see it, or whatever. And then if you go down here to like bevise, then it's like prove. I want to prove my love to you, or sorry, this is not translated then. And then to overbevise, like to persuade. So just basically by taking these words, we have like a logic that shows here, which is not related to these actual words. I don't think that this is an actual etymological fact. I think it has it's, or at least not in this way, that it has to do with love, for example, in this way. And of course, you can just expand on this.
How does this fit in what you started to talk about? I did not understand. How does this fit in the flow of the previous?
I will show you. This is just to show some sort of relationship between these words. You can take vise, then you can say vise to show, and then you can say if, of course, if you translate this or not, translate, but anyway, replace it even more. And you have all sort of association that builds onto these words. That you have C could actually be to kysse, like kiss, or you could have we, which is like goes into sorry, which is something like I will do something. And I mean, this is to me like the foundation of something that could be a poem, if that makes sense. If this could be put into a proper form, you can somehow make these things appear and show how they are.
This is fantastic. I feel I know how to write poetry now. I'm definitely trying this when I get home.
Yeah, that's
and in Danish.
Actually, I think this would also be. I mean, this would also be a great way to learn a language. I mean, if you did this in German or French or something like that, you probably have a very good understanding of it. Anyway, I'll just show you just 3 or 4 prototypes of how this could be done. Then, to draw it back to the original thing. I've begun doing these sort of complex, where you have, if you read the first line, it just says C, because there's nothing here. Then you have the next line, which is kysse, because there's a kysse here, and I say here. And then you have this line, which is just vise, bevise, overbevise, and then it basically says we here, and then it says if you read this line. So this is like somehow this complex that is being put into place in one way and one genre. I also tried like this just to put out words. I think that I've highlighted just the ones that I've been talking about here, but you can see if you say "se," you could also say "kick," like just a synonym for that. Or you could say "so" to like draw it in a different sense. Combine it in all sort of way, and it's like every time you move within this map, something happens to the word. We also have like a vase, like a vase goes from vise, and then you have a var, which is like a product, I guess you'd say. But anyway, as you move around in this, you'll see that these are also different associations. These are like either about putting stuff together that makes a new word, or it's like putting some prefix on it just to make a new word, or it could even be like here where you do a synonym, then you could also just associate along this line to make new words. So it's like if you have some sort of point of departure anyway, I guess you could do this kind of association exercise with any word or any word complex. But also, I don't know if this is something that you would actually sit down and read. I think that this one is perhaps more effective or in your face, whereas this is a little bit harder. I think you actually need to sit with a book, and it's probably even impossible to perform this in a talking way.
And what about the performative aspect of it? The first example you showed, or when you showed your own poem, I was just I'm just translating, and the auditive part of it. When you're performing, you're making it more obvious and where you put the emphasis, like on what words. So, what do you think about the performative aspect of the poetry?
I think it makes sense. Like if you take this in-out sort of thing, that you can in some way make these meanings appear within the context of performing something, but at the same time you can also say that you have some sort of associations that would be always graphicals. Like if you take a word, I think I have this one. If you have like vel and then lev, where you like mirror it, then you wouldn't necessarily catch this doing a sonic performance. Then you would need to see it written on paper.
Okay.
To understand it. But I think it's a very interesting topic also to have. Like you would also say that if you look at this poem, it's really not. It doesn't even have it doesn't look like a poem. Basically, is what I wanted to say, and it's actually I've been trying to break this out in verse, just to make it appear on paper in a way where it looks like a poem. But it's actually, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's been very, very hard for me at least to do it, and I'm still presenting it this way, if I should present it. But I think it's an interesting topic that you can say that some poems are actually better being performed in a sonic domain, and some are better being read on a visual domain.
And some even might be better combined, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about my time.
So is there then time to a bit of conversation on this now, or
I think this is. this is all my time. I've been talking for 30 minutes.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. But you were also asking questions in the meantime, so I think it's okay.
Thank you.